In this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we are visiting with Dwayne Carter. Dwayne shows us around his man cave and shares some of the giant non-typical bucks he has and shares some stories of some other great deer. You also get to check out his Thermal Hog Hunting Rig. You guys are going to like this. Let's go.
Hey guys, I'm Dwayne Carter. We're going to come in here and check out my man cave. I built this shop just right at 2 years ago. Always wanted a shop, always wanted a man cave. Kind of ran out of room in the house, and I do a little bit of videoing and a little bit of editing of my own, so I made myself a little man cave in here. But I'm pretty proud of this room. I built everything myself, including these doors, except for the hardware. And this is where I like to hang out. My man cave, studio. Here's some of the deer that I've taken. Got a lot of stories on the wall. Actually, we'll start over here. I got a little 8-point, my very first racked buck. I shot him during black powder season in probably 1999, I think, 2 years after I graduated. And that's back when you just hunted deer. You didn't pick a deer and target a single deer. And actually, just in the last 5 years did I start doing that. But back over here to this non-typical, I stumbled into him on a place that I'd hunted for a long time. I didn't know the deer was there. Found a whole bunch of deer out in a wheat field, and me and my ex-father-in-law snuck down there and waited till almost dark. And when we was on our way back to the pickup, we seen another 3 deer up on the hill, and he raised his head up, and I got him shot with my rifle. Pretty proud of him. He's, he would have been a giant if he was the same on both sides, but got some really cool character. Just about 2 years after that, I shot this big wide deer up in Medford. He's like 22 inches inside, had over 25-inch main beams, great 2s and 3s. I think he grossed around 154, I think, as an 8-point mainframe. So just a great looking deer, big frame. He probably one of my better impressive looking deer. My centerpiece here is the deer I call my non-typical. I was coyote hunting with a good buddy of mine, Robert Pruitt, and I think it was the end of January in 2015, and we seen this deer go into a woodlot. So I ran cameras all summer, and I finally got pictures of him in September in velvet, and I was just amazed. And he finally showed back up October the 6th, I think, one night. And then come November, he started showing up pretty regularly. On the morning of the 15th, I had 130-inch 8-point walk right underneath me. Sure enough, about an hour later, this deer came in, and I'm pretty sure that my cousin actually gave him to me because he came from that way, and the way that my cousin was set up, I'm pretty sure this deer was downwind of his set. Bumped him with his wind. He come out the back door and come over there to me, and I'm like, he's downwind. I got to do something. Well, I just happened to have an aerosol can of Tink 69. And I started spraying that stuff on every tree limb and all the way around me. And I'm sitting there just waiting. Finally, he broke and he come. It was pretty crazy because it was like he was bird dogging. Like he would go to the east until he wouldn't get downwind of the cone of my scent. And I'm sure he was smelling that Tink 69. And as soon as he'd get out of my cone of my scent, he'd turn around and he'd come back the other way. And as soon as he'd get out of it, he'd cut back in. He started zigzagging, just bird dogging back and forth. Finally, he come into an opening at 40 yards, and I was fortunate, made a really good shot on him and got him recovered. He scored 178 inches, I think, gross, 17 scoreable points. And that is when I started targeting deer and, particular deer, and started trying to hunt a little bit better deer. Right after that deer, and I'm buck tagged out. I'd already killed a deer during black powder season, and then I killed him on November the 15th. Well, I get my buddy Dusty Staton, and I'm like, dude, we got to kill something on this video camera. And so he's like, all right, And I was like, I got a deer found. I found him while I was coyote hunting. And so this really pretty 8-point right here, he was one of the first good deer that I got on a good quality video camera. And we hunted him for 3 days out in a field. We seen him one day chasing a doe. It was during the rut. Never seen him again for 2 or 3 days. On, I think, the 3rd day, we stayed in the woods in a pinch point. I got a big, deep creek right here, and it rises up about 50 feet or so elevation, and then the field's up here, and a woodlot, a wood ridge to my northwest, and then big woods to my southeast. It was just a perfect pinch point. We're not there an hour. Hear the leaves crunching. This dude walks up 25 yards away from him. Dusty shoots him with my 7 mag. He runs about 40 yards, and man, we were tickled. Great footage. Everything was perfect. When I whistled and this deer raised his head up, I mean, it looked like his G2s were 14 inches long. It was pretty neat. So the following year, I shot that 9-point over there with my bow. He was a 126-inch deer, walked right up, stuck his head in a scrape, and I shot him right in the chest. He ran about 50 yards. And it was after that deer right there, I decided that I'm not going to shoot deer that I'm unsure if I want to shoot them or not. I'm going to try to step up my game and start taking a little bit better deer. So I called my good buddy Blake Kretschmeyer. He lives up in northern Oklahoma, owned the property where I killed my big wide buck. Blake was nice enough to let us come in, and I called him and talked to him. He said, man, I got a strip milo field that I've been seeing deer in. There ain't very much timber up there, but there's a lot of deer in the area, so I'm going in blind. Never step foot on this piece of property. I go out to the very middle of the mile section and sit by a post, and I'm really wanting to go to the home place where I'd killed this wide 8-point. And the wind's blowing 25 miles an hour. It's freezing cold in Medford. There's nothing to block the wind, and I've had enough of it. I'm leaving at like 9 o'clock. And so I pack up all my camera gear in my backpack, and I get to walking through the strip milo field a half mile back to the truck, and I see a deer out in the strip milo field. And he's 300, 400 yards away. I don't know. I mean, it's a strip milo field. I can't tell yardage on flat ground like that. Well, he beds down, and I knew he has a pretty good racked buck. So I was like, I'm videoing with my GoPro. I'm going to sneak up here, and I'm going to see if I can't get a better look at this deer. And about that time, my drop time buck stands up. And I'm sitting there glassing him. He's around 200 yards. And I'm like, man, that's a good looking deer. He's got good twos. But I couldn't tell about his main beams. And I'm trying not to kill a little deer anymore. And I just kept seeing him being around the 140 mark. I didn't think he had very long main beams because when he was broadside, they just didn't show them. Finally, I'm sitting there watching, and I'm videoing. I get my second camera angle out, and I'm videoing with my big camera, and I'm watching with my binoculars, and he goes to chase that little buck off. And when he does, he turns his head, and I seen that drop tine. And I was like, yeah, this is going to happen. I'm going to shoot a 140-inch 8-point with a 10-inch drop tine. That's fine with me. So I get my gun up, and I get on him, and 300 WSM, I drop him, and I'm tickled. I don't know how big of a deer he is until I walk up to him. And when I got my hands on him, there was no ground shrinkage whatsoever. Just a great deer. That was my 2016 season. 2017. That's the year of the giant. I just about gave up my whole year this year. I had one of my best friends, lifelong buddy, Matt Hill, found an absolute giant. 234 7/8 inches to be exact. And I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to video it. So all my deer, all my 140, 50-inch deer, whatever they were on the back burner. Tried to get this deer killed, and it just didn't work out. His wife's uncle ended up killing it. Just a great deer. So I wasted half of my year chasing this deer with him, but I think I still went into my pinch point where Dusty had killed his big 8-point. And I hunted it one morning, and this deer with the broke main beam up here, he come chasing a doe right up to me, 25 yards, and I got a rifle in my hand. I'm trying to video. You can't self-film during the rut hardly. He runs right up to me, and I seen that one good side out on the side of the trees, and I give it to him. Didn't get it on video. It was horrible. Matter of fact, the only deer in the pinch point that I got on video was Dusty's. We're coming into 2019 season. I'm getting some big deer showing up. It's around November. Cell phone camera goes off. I got the dagger buck at one of my other sets. I packed up everything, and I'm going to the shooting house with plans of setting all day and however many days it takes for me to kill this dagger buck. He's a great deer. He's messed up, but he's a 160-inch frame deer, on his good side. His right side's messed up, but still an awesome deer. I've got history with the deer. I'd passed him up the year before on video. Well, on the opening day of rifle season, I've got this 10 point with the split brow tine. I've got him found now, and he's daylighting. And I got my dagger buck that I really want to kill with a bow because I got history with him. So I'm unsure of what I'm going to do, and I went ahead and decided that I wanted to go and hunt this dagger buck with my bow. It took me 8 days. Opening day rifle season, I hunted that morning, and I knew he was due. It was going to be on the third day. I knew he was due to show up. About 2 o'clock that afternoon, the dagger buck shows up, and if he holds to his pattern, he's going to be back in 3 hours, which is going to be 5 o'clock that afternoon. I load my daughter up. We haul butt over there. It's about a 30-minute drive or so. We get in the shooting house. Sure enough, right around 5 o'clock, this deer comes strolling up all by himself. I run a vortex broadhead right through his side. He run about 60 yards. But I get him killed, and then I took a couple days off. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I went out to where I'd had my split brow tine 10 point found. Hadn't had any corn out there. I drove in, threw out a couple 100 pounds of corn, a whole bunch of buck candy. Drove out a little ways and found me a place to put a stool and my video camera and left all my stuff there. Drove up to my buddy's house and walked back in. Hadn't seen this deer, hadn't even had him on camera in 3 or 4 days, but it was the only deer that I really wanted to hunt at this time. I was sitting there playing on my phone, dig it, I think. And I looked up, and here he come. Broad daylight, sun still up. Walked up to 100 yards, broadside. I shot him and ended a great deer season. I broke 300 inches that year, which is pretty good for me. While I was hunting these 2 deer, this deer over here on the left was in the picture, and he was actually my number 1, my number uno. He was a giant. That's the flyer buck. We have his 2000 and what would it be? 2018 sheds when he was a 4-year-old. Just a great deer with a lot of character. So in 2019, he was a 5.5-year-old. I've had this deer on camera since 2016 when he was 2.5. The Friday before rifle season, this deer broke half of his rack off. And that took him off the list for me. And I'm pretty sure that he broke half the rack off fighting the split brow tine 10 point, because when I killed the split brow tine 10 point, he had a huge festered up sore in his neck, a big puncture, like a good one. And just happened to be right around the same time that the flyer buck split his ear and broke half of his rack off. Come into 2020, and I've got a giant deer to hunt. I know he's going to be at the top of the list, and he's on my neighbor Preston's property. About that time, a few of the other neighbors start getting pictures of this deer, and they start, word gets out that they're getting pictures of this deer, and I got him found. I got him pinpointed in. And Preston was like, if you're going to kill that deer, you better get him killed before somebody else does. So he moved all of his bull cows out of the pasture that's got the big heavy creek line in. And I went in there and I made me a set, and I made a good set. Perfect crosswind. He put his shooting house in there. We moved his feeder over for a crosswind. I've kind of learned how to make sets from coyote hunting. I think it helps me a lot. I try to do a little more of a crosswind set when I'm hunting over a bait pile. That way it'll allow my deer to come in and get downwind of my feed where they're wanting to get. So I'm in a shooting house. I've got my feed straight to my west. I got a north wind. The trail to get in here is from the south. I've learned from hunting the giant that them deer will bed downwind of your set, and they will watch their downwind a lot. So I can't come in from there. I have Preston drive me around the mile section, drop me off, and I come in ambidextrous as hell. I come in from the northeast at a crosswind, and I get down around this pond dam, and I belly crawl underneath his fences, and he's got some of the best fences in Pottawatomie County. I mean, they're tight. Crawled underneath them. I get snuck into the shooting house undetected. Another big 10 point that had been running with this deer, he shows up early, sun's still up, and he come in from the south. So that's telling me that I did right. Had I walked in from the south the way that normally I would, you would think you would, that deer would have busted me and it would have been game over. About 10 minutes before dark, I get all my bucks showing up, and I look out my window towards the north, and there's the flyer buck at 40 yards, and I can't get my camera turned on him. I got my camera set up facing west, and it's up against that wall, and I'm sitting there looking out this window, and this deer's at 40 yards, and I've never seen him in person. I don't even know what to think. And I'm like, Jesus, there he is. This is fixing to happen. You know, I got plenty of time. I got plenty of light. Finally, he breaks and he comes on up here to my corn pile at 39 yards, and I bury the pin. I touch it off, make a great shot. My arrow hit right behind the pin. He just ducked and he rolled. And when he ducked and he rolled, that arrow went in about the center of the body, and it kicked up and it spined him. I was pretty sick about the situation, but after going back and looking at the footage, I shot this deer just as good as I could shoot him. I mean, I hit just right behind the pin. I couldn't have went up there and poked any better where I'd shot him at. But he's my second biggest bow buck. My second biggest buck, actually to date, he scored 170 and 2/8 inches. So one of my other hobbies is pig hunting at nighttime. This is an Armalite AR-10 and a 308. It's topped off with a Pulsar Trail 2 XP50 LRF, which is laser rangefinder, and it is it's a pig killing machine. Just a great fun hobby. I enjoy pig hunting, coyote hunting. I'm not a big turkey hunter. I'll go a little bit, but one of my favorites is killing pigs because they need to be killed. You know, they're starting to overrun Oklahoma, and if we don't kill 70% of them, we're behind in the game.